40% of college graduates, their first job out of college is a sales job. And even companies have to hide that because they'll call it client success, or they'll call it some other name, but it's like, it's sales. Like, and you have to understand, like, we are all in sales.
And also be able to pivot, like, industry changes, the way you sell might change. So being able to kind of learn and roll with the punches and, be able to pivot when necessary, when the market changes.
All right, welcome to this episode of the How to Get a Job podcast. And today we're going to talk about how you can break into sales and marketing careers. And to do so, we have Kim Bruyette, who has 7 years of recruitment experience, and she's also a career coach. Kim, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good, and I am super excited to talk about marketing and sales because that is actually what I went to school for. That's where I spent 6 years in my PepsiCo corporate career before going into full-time career coach mode. So I love this like career path. I actually think sales is actually one of the most underrated careers, but one of the most like fulfilling and lucrative careers. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into recruiting, marketing, and sales professionals.
Yeah. Well, awesome to hear. And I totally agree. Sales can be transferable to a lot of different things. So, I have 7 years of recruiting experience. My first job out of college actually was in sales. I was in a software sales position. I did enjoy it. I just knew it's not what I wanted to do long term. And so I transitioned into recruiting and was able to kind of use my sales skill set, but more so focusing on working with people. And I worked for a staffing agency for about a little under 2 years and was doing staffing agency recruiting, so recruiting on behalf of clients. And then from there, transitioned into internal recruiting, so recruiting on behalf of the company I was working for kind of the rest of my recruiting career. So I was on the sales and marketing team at the staffing agency in my first recruiting job. So I sort of fell into that niche a little bit and then carried it through the rest of my recruiting career. So I've recruited for entry level, business development associate, sales positions, all the way up to, more high level roles, whether it be managerial, director, even the VP level. And then I also have recruited for the marketing side of things. In my most recent recruiting position, I was actually the sole recruiter for our entire marketing division. So anything from like a very niche position, like a paid ads manager, and anything from kind of more associate level all the way up to like head of the department. So from there, I switched over to career coaching. I just got really passionate about helping the candidate. There's so many nuances on the other side that candidates just don't know about or aren't prepared for, and just got really passionate about helping those candidates feel prepared going into their job search.
So one of the things that's super interesting, and I would love for us to dive a little deeper into this, is the difference between internal and external recruiting. So like you talked about how you started your recruiting career on the staffing agency, consulting agency side of it, and then you moved into an internal recruiter. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about like the main differences and more like what should a candidate know when they're talking to an internal recruiter versus an external recruiter?
Yeah, good question. Because I do think that gets, a little bit confusing sometimes if you don't know a lot about the recruiting space, especially from the candidate side of things. So a staffing agency recruiter really is working on behalf of their clients. So they can be recruiting for 20 different companies at any given time, for example. And essentially, companies would hire that firm to fill the role for them. And there's a number of reasons why companies would hire a firm. Maybe it's a really niche role that they're having trouble filling themselves. Maybe they're a small company and they don't have a recruiting team, or maybe it's an executive level search that's really hard to find, and recruiters they're just needing external help. The biggest difference is that companies are paying the staffing firm. So all of those recruiters and everyone I worked with, was fantastic, but those recruiters do get a commission at the end of the day if you take the job. So that's one thing to note. versus a internal recruiter. They are embedded in the HR department for that company. They don't get a commission, or at least I never got any sort of commissions or bonuses. Maybe some companies do, but typically they don't get a bonus, and they're working directly with the hiring team to fill that position. They also are, like I said, embedded in the HR department, so they might be doing some other things as well, whether it's employee engagement or maybe they're doing the internal promotion cycles. I know I did some of that. But they aren't necessarily like motivated by a commission. That being said, like staffing agency recruiters aren't bad. Like they're not, they're not gonna like lure you into a position, but just keeping that in mind when you are speaking to them, and making sure you're working with the right ones. And also understanding that, they get different jobs all the time. Really, they're going off of what their clients come to them with. So they might not have your type of role that you're looking for at any given time, versus if there's a company that you're interested in and they kind of always recruit for the same positions, they might have similar roles to what you're looking for. So that's really the key difference between the two.
Yeah, I think what's important to even touch that is the fact that, like, an external recruiter, like you're saying, they're driven on the commission side of it. And the reason why I say that is, as a candidate, when you are messaged by an external recruiter, their level of sense of urgency is much, much higher. And they're going to want to reply faster. And if you're the right fit, they're going to want to put you directly to the company with the hiring manager, with the hiring team, whatever that company's process is. But what I would say is that I don't want you guys to, if you have a call, and it's generally you have a call with the external recruiter first, and the recruiter says you're great, and then, do you mind if I send your resume over to the hiring manager? Like, if that call went really well, I want you to make sure you understand, like, they're not the decision maker. Like, they have to pass you down to the company to make that decision. And they're going to try to coach you up and get you to pass, because if you get placed, they're going to make a commission. The staffing agency is going to win. And another thing is, like, because their compensation is correlated to the jobs they place. When you message an external recruiter saying, hey, do you have a job opening for this? If they don't have a job opening that they're recruiting that matches your skills, they're not going to, I found in my experience, not going to be as attentive to reply, because it's like, it's not worth it for them. They're not making money or commission on it. And so they're more tend to ignore you. While an internal recruiter for a company, because their compensation is more based on salary, maybe yearly bonus, and they're representing the company and the brand, they're more careful about the candidates or the applicant's experience than an external recruiter will be. And again, this is all generalizing. There could be really, really good internal and external recruiters, and there could also be really, really bad internal and external recruiters. So that's just more on that experience. And if you're an international student and you're hearing this, I think a lot of the horror stories that you hear from recruiting agencies, it's a lot of on the ones that are working with international students, because they do tend to have reputation for taking advantage or even charging you fees and then charging companies fees. And so that is something that it's really important to research before making a decision and signing something by working with them. But Kim, let's talk a little bit more about marketing and sales careers and roles. Like, how do you feel like is the easiest way to break into, let's say, a career in sales if you're right out of college?
Yeah, good question. So I actually, when I first went to internal recruiting for the first almost 2 years, I only hired for entry-level sales positions. So definitely have a lot of experience in that realm and talked to many, many recent grads in my time there. So I think the biggest thing with sales is that you can spin a lot of your experience to be applicable, to sales, or be transferable to sales. So for example, we really like candidates that had, any sort of like hospitality or restaurant experience, because they had strong communication skills. Any sort of like fundraising background was really great. If they worked within the industry that we were selling to. So at the time, we had a lot of education clients, so both K through 12 and higher ed. So if they, had internships at their university and knew a lot about the industry, that was a huge plus. And then from there, it's really looking at a lot of soft skills and honestly how you kind of sell yourself in the interview. So if you're someone who has strong communication skills, if you are very goal oriented and intrinsically motivated, and kind of have that sort of drive to pick up the phone and cold call people or send cold emails, that goes a really long way. So how you're able to kind of sell yourself in that regard, I think is a really great way to get into sales. So that is kind of the one field that, although obviously hard skills do matter to a degree, but a lot of it is sort of the soft skill side of things when you're first trying to break into the industry right out of college.
Yeah. Um, I think you're right. Like a lot of the times, where especially level entry roles in sales, as I also hired a bunch of salespeople for PepsiCo when they were coming out of college, it's like a lot of the soft skills, like the people skills, and a lot of the grit, and being able to understand that you're gonna get rejected the majority of the time, and it's about not letting that get into your head and keep going and saying, "Hey." At the end of the day, like the companies generally who have a really good sales process understand the numbers. Like, hey, you're gonna get rejected 98 times out of 100, but you need to call those 98 people to get to those two people that say yes, right? And then obviously the conversion rate might differ depending on the job, the industry, the product or service, the price point. But it's super important. Like it's like the grit, the determination, the people skills, um, which is really really interesting. I actually have one of my really good friends. He has a business called the medical sales. It's called Evolve Your Success, but he helps people break into medical sales. And it's interesting that his favorite clients to work with, I don't know if that would be the word if they're hearing me, but this is okay, is actually teachers and nurses. Because he's identified that there's two main things that you really need to be successful in medical sales. You need to understand the science, and you need to be able to educate your doctors and like the patients on whether you're selling pharmaceuticals or medical devices. Teachers have the education part really well, right? And nurses have the science really well. So when you have either a nurse or a teacher, you just have to teach them the other. So teachers, they learn the biology, the science behind it, and nurses, they teach them the teachable part. And they become the best medical sales. And I think what you said about hospitality jobs, like server jobs, like front desk jobs, also become really good level entry sales roles. I know that at PepsiCo, one of the things that we realized is that when we were hiring people, it was like a sales job, but they had to drive the trucks, and it was kind of like a really blue collar sales job, but you could make really good money. It's like people that were first generation that went to community college first and then went to a 4-year university had a really good profile. And played sports. If you had all those three things, like, oh, that's a really good profile. What are some other things that you think uh, it makes a really good salesperson? Then we can talk about marketing afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. No, I actually agree with the athlete side of things. Definitely, if you were a previous athlete, that can definitely be a strong profile. But I agree in terms of just being able to communicate. The biggest thing about sales is uncovering the other person's pain points, and then being able to educate and explain how your product or service or whatever it is can solve that pain point. So having those really strong communication skills, being able to educate, and also being really coachable. That was something that we always looked for in candidates, especially when you are coming, right out of college or you're going into more of an early in career position. There's a lot to learn. And so someone that's malleable and coachable, I think is a really great fit for sales because they can kind of be a sponge and soak in all of that training that we were providing them. And also be able to pivot, like, industry changes, the way you sell might change. So being able to kind of learn and roll with the punches and, be able to pivot when necessary, when the market changes or whatever it is, and maybe change your sales strategy, I think is important as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting because most people I speak to have such a negative idea of what sales are, and they're just so afraid of like, oh, like I don't want to be a salesperson. I think about like people thinking of salespeople as like a used car salesman in Matilda. I don't know if you ever watched that movie, but people who like it's like this like sketchy salesperson trying to sell you something that's broken. And the reality is like, I had read this in a book a long time ago. I don't know if the statistics are the same, but 40% of college graduates, their first job out of college is a sales job. And even companies have to hide that because they'll call it client success or they'll call it some other name, but it's like it's sales. Like, and you have to understand, like, we are all in sales. And the sooner you realize that like sales is such an amazing career and we are all in sales at one point or another. Like even when you went to a recruiter, you were doing sales. like that was still a sales job. Even when you went to an internal recruiter, that was still a sales job because you had to sell the candidate on why working at this company was a good fit, even if the candidate had applied. And I do think that you guys should look into a career in sales if you're trying to figure out and you're lost what career is a good career, good path for you. I think exploring the sales route is something. But Kim, like, what would you suggest? Like, if I'm lost, I'm in college student, I'm one of those 40% of students that, or 60% of students that graduate and don't have a job lined up. Like, where should I start looking for a career sales? What are some good sales career paths that I should be looking into? Like, what's the difference maybe going into like a tech industry versus other type of sales? Because you said you started in tech.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's just figuring out an industry that you're interested in and passionate about. Because at the end of the day, if you are excited about whatever industry, product, service you're selling, it's going to come through on the phone when you're selling to people. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the first step, is just figuring out what am I excited about and try and look for companies in that industry. And then from there, I mean, there are so many different, pretty much like you said, every company has a sales division. So that is the good news. There's a ton of sales positions out there. I know it's the summertime right now, but if someone is, maybe going into their last semester, I think career fairs are a must. I know that we went to like every career fair. I was in the DC area at the time, but we went to all the Virginia schools and we were always talking about our entry level sales positions. So that's a great start, just to get some networking going. And then I would say this for any position, for anyone on the job search, but just looking into your network, seeing if you know anyone that's in sales in a industry or at a company that you're excited about, and networking with them and seeing if you can get a referral that way, is where I would start.
Yeah. So I actually majored in professional sales. There was actually, I think there's only like a couple of universities in the United States that actually have a professional sales major. And I remember I was so gravitated towards that major because I read a book that said the majority of Fortune 500 CEOs start in sales. Like their path is from sales. And so I remember that that's the reason why I was like, oh, I want to learn sales. But aside from sales, marketing is another amazing career path that you don't have to have a business or a marketing major to get into. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a career path in marketing looks like, and how to break into marketing? What are some of those level entry roles that maybe I don't have a ton of marketing experience that I can apply for?
Yeah, absolutely. So marketing has so many different paths that you can go into. So it's really, when you're first starting out, it's deciding which area of marketing you're most excited about. And if you don't have any marketing experience, you likely don't know for sure. So I always suggest starting out in more of a generalist position. So whether it be digital marketing associate or digital marketing specialist. Very similar to what we were talking about earlier with recruiting agencies and internal marketing has that same exact thing. There are marketing agencies and then there are internal marketers. So a lot of companies outsource their marketing entirely and hire agencies for that. I actually think that could be a really great place to start, just because they do have a lot of those more kind of generalist positions. And also you just get exposed to so many different types of marketing. You can really use that as a starting point to decide which area you'd want to continue in. So with that, you're working with a number of different clients, maybe in different industries, and doing different kind of marketing campaigns. So that's what I always suggest for starting out. There's so many areas of marketing. There's email marketing, there's social media, there's SEO, there's, more of the technical side of things. There's paid ads. There's so many different areas, and you really don't know which area is most exciting to you until you get into it. So getting an internship in marketing to first start out, whether you're in school or maybe you're the summer after you graduated, I think it's a good starting point. And then from there, maybe exploring a marketing agency to start out with, if you want to kind of get exposure to a lot of different areas of marketing and industries to kind of figure out which area is for you. And then kind of going from there and sort of niching down into the area of marketing that you're most excited about.
Yeah, one thing is like, if you're listening to this and you grew up in in a time where social media was everything, right, and you are hooked to your phone, I know that when you think of marketing, you think of just social media marketing. And I think, Kim, you mentioned a lot of different other options. And I would even say, hey, you see everybody going towards social media marketing, but there's other amazing like paid ads, which is still part of social media, or there is email marketing. Becoming a copywriter is one of those skills that will forever be in need. I know that we can go to ChatGPT and it could be very helpful, but the art of selling while writing is going to be very hard to replace. And there's just such a lot of creators. There's another type of role that I know. Like I have a friend who owns a podcasting agency, and he hires tons of podcast producers, people who edit this types of podcasts, like the one you're listening. That's a marketing role itself. People who also are doing a lot of A/B testing on websites, and so I think anytime like you that you're like, hey, I'm not sure what career path it is. I think marketing and sales are both two amazing opportunities where it doesn't matter if you studied English, liberal arts, if you studied becoming a teacher, if like there's always going to need marketers, you're always going to need salespeople. Those positions are actually really easy to quantify nowadays, especially like the digital marketing side of it and the sales side, because when you have a company like when a company right now, like when we're in a recession, or not in a recession right now, but we're in this titter between we're going to a recession or not, and you see a lot of companies playing very defensive, like they're not necessarily being aggressive of hiring, and they're trying to do layoffs and they're cutting costs, and you hear all these companies. If your role is very quantifiable, right? Or what in sales is an easy one to say. It's like, okay, we're paying Kim $100,000, but she's bringing in $500,000 of profit and $10 million of revenue. Doesn't make sense to fire Kim. It doesn't make sense to let go of that role, right? Like it's too easy to quantify how keeping her on is actually a net positive for the organization. And same thing with a lot of the analytical marketing roles. And if I can give you some advice, if you do want to go into marketing, the more technical and analytical you can make your role, the more security you're going to have in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, even when we're in, a downturn or a recession, you still need to create sales, and you need marketing and sales to do that. So I'm still finding there's a lot of those types of positions on the market. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that every company will always need, and it's a skill set that will always be in need. So it's a great path to go down for sure.
What advice do you have? Just, if you can summarize how we can help the individuals listening to this podcast break into marketing and sales.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say it's looking at your current skill sets and seeing how can this be transferable to either marketing or sales, whichever industry that you're interested in getting into, and being able to sort of sell yourself or alter your resume to really display that. I think that's kind of step number one. Number two is going to your network, seeing who do I have that I know that is in either of those industries, and starting either networking conversations just to learn more about how those folks got into those roles. And then also, inquiring if they have any opportunities at the company they're working with, or maybe they know of some of in the field. So I think that's the second best thing. I think internships are a really great way. There's less sales internships than there are marketing internships. But internships are a really great way to get into the field. I know at all the companies I worked for, we love to hire our previous interns because we knew them. So getting in that way, I think is another great step in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. And Kim, I know that you specialize in coaching marketing and sales professionals, land a great career. Tell us a little bit more about the services you provide and how they can get a hold of you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I partner with sales and marketing candidates to help them within their job search. So I really help from A to Z, starting out typically with resume review, LinkedIn review, and cover letter review. Then going into their job search strategy. So really assessing how are you currently looking for jobs? What is your current process? How are you currently networking? And helping them in that regard to sort of elevate and make sure that they're optimizing how they are looking for jobs. I also offer interview prep. So I conduct mock interviews with my clients, and provide all sorts of tips and tricks on, especially the recruiter screen, because I've conducted hundreds of those on the back end, just really sharing what recruiters are looking for and how they can really ace that interview, all the way to offer negotiation. So how can they, get the best offer that they're able to get, and really how to go about those conversations. I find that candidates tend to get really nervous to ask for more or negotiate. So just setting them up for success in that regard. But really, I work one-on-one with my clients. So I alter sort of our game plan, our strategy to what their goals are and what their career goals are, because everyone is different in what they're needing help with in their job search.
Absolutely. So we'll put a link to your website. So if you want to learn more about Kim and work with her, just check out the link on the show notes here below. And thank you guys so much for listening, and catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks so much.
All right, welcome to today's rant. And today I am going to talk about why you should highly consider a career in sales. And I know, I get it. We don't like sales. We all have such a negative perspective on sales. And we talked about it on today's interview. But I'm telling you to please, please, please take off that negative image that you have of salespeople and think about salespeople as problem solvers, especially people who are doing B2B sales, which is if you have a degree and you're graduating from college, what most likely you're going to do. Think about the people who are selling medical devices and pharmaceutical products to the hospitals and the doctors that are saving lives. Think about the individuals that are selling the technology that we use to other companies, the cloud, think about like the Salesforce or the CRM tools. Those individuals make amazing compensation and solve the world's problems. Think about the people who are selling airplanes to American Airlines, Delta, and Southwest. Those salespeople have an amazing career. Now, becoming a good salesperson is not easy. It does take a lot of listening and it does take a long process, but it's a career that you should definitely look into because the amount of freedom, the amount of compensation, the type of lifestyle that you can have, it is second to none. Now, this career does come with some cons. It does mean a lot of pressure when you're ending the quarter and you're not selling your sales quota. It does mean that if you're not performing, the company will let you go. But it also means stability if you are putting in the work, you're following the game plan, and you have grit and determination. Because like I mentioned on the interview, if the company is not doing good, a good salesperson is the last person they will fire because you pay for yourself and more. So I want you to consider a career in sales. If you have a technical background, if you have an engineer background, that is a perfect position to go into some technical sales roles, into some consulting, right? Because if you think about it, understanding the technology, being fascinated by the technology and helping educate others on that technology and helping them solve their company's problems by using your technologies is going to be rewarding and lucrative. Also, think about the fact that, if you want to get big in consulting as a lawyer, as a realtor, if you want to become a partner in the Big Four and McKinsey or Boston Consulting, you're not going to do that without sales. You're going to need sales in your career. So the earlier you start to learn to sell, the better you're going to be. Look, if you find value in this podcast, give it a like, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with a friend. If you're looking for a job and you would like our team's help, definitely hit the link below and we can try to have a conversation with you and see if working together makes sense. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. See you later.